Siobhan. This is my first video, so if you don't already know me and you somehow managed to stumble upon this video, it's lovely to have you. Feel free to introduce yourself down below. I am filming because I have issues with anxiety and depression, and I find that doing my makeup is something that relaxes me and really helps, and I know that it helps me to hear other people kind of just talk about their lives and what's going on and know that I'm not alone. So maybe I can also help somebody else. And if not, I figure at least it'll probably help me to be able to talk through things and kind of have some point of view, some point of reference for where I'm coming from when I go back and look at this in a couple of months or even a couple of years. I also am starting on a weight loss journey, so this will give me the opportunity to kind of see how things are changing with that as I go. So it's not going to be a tutorial, it's just going to be me putting on makeup and getting ready to go to bed, really, because it's 11:30 at night, and I work until 10 o'clock most nights, so I come home and do my makeup to kind of unwind, the opposite of everybody else on the planet who does their makeup before they go to work. So I've already put on primer. I'll try to remember to go through what I'm using as I go through. I'm going to be talking, so if I forget, everything will be listed down below. And I did already prime my face just using the Cover FX blurring primer. So I am going to be using the Too Faced Peach Perfect foundation in the shade Swan. And this foundation is amazing. It smells kind of weird because, you know, Too Faced loves their scents. And I'm not a big fan of the fake peachy smell that comes along with this, but I like the finish and I like the shade, so I deal with it. And it's not awful. It's not like super strong, but it is just a little weird. It's definitely a fake peach smell. So, while I'm doing this, I'm just going to talk a little bit about my current situation with anxiety and depression and what has caused me to get where I am right now. And I know that I probably seem fine. I've had years to kind of hide how I'm feeling, and I've had some issues lately with being able to do that. I'll just kind of randomly break down and cry, and I hate crying. So I actually, on Tuesday, which it's Sunday now, so if you're watching this some time in, well, obviously you'll be watching it in the future because you're not watching it live, but so Tuesday, so in 2 days, I actually have my first appointment with a therapist. So I am both nervous and looking forward to that. Just because on the one hand, like, I really know that it's something that I need to do, but on the other hand, like, just sitting down and talking to somebody, like, doing this is sitting down and talking to a camera, and if I decide that I don't want it out there, I can just never post it and no one will ever know. But sitting down and talking to a person whose job is literally to judge me, and I mean, I know that that's not really, like, I took a lot of psychology classes and stuff, and I know that it's not, her job isn't exactly to judge me. Like, I know that that's not really what she's going to be doing, but that's kind of how it feels, and it is to analyze me. And, you know, I'm almost a little nervous that I'm going to go in and be like, hey, this is what's going on, and this is how I feel, and I have anxiety and depression. And she's gonna be like, nothing's wrong with you, and you are fine, and you need to just get over it. And I mean, I know that realistically that's not what's gonna happen, but there's not, you know, while I am a typically fairly rational person, there's nothing rational about having anxiety and depression. So the brush I'm using, by the way, is just the Japanesque 708. It's their dense foundation brush. I prefer to use a brush. It gives better coverage and uses less product. So I use a brush, and then this is also the Japanesque sponge. I've never used it. This was my first time. So then I just go over it to kind of smooth things out. But I prefer using a brush first. But yeah, so I grew up sort of without knowing much of my family. I have 4 brothers, and the oldest one was put up for adoption when he was 8 months old, and he's 9 years older than me. And then the other 3 grew up with my dad's parents, and sort of with my dad, but predominantly with my dad's parents. They were around until I was, I think, almost 3. Like, we still could go and see them, and then I don't really know what happened, but my mom lost visitation, and so they weren't around. I always knew about all of them, but definitely kind of grew up as an only child with just me and my mom. And so that might seem like, wow, she's starting at the beginning of her story, but it's relevant to my current situation. So I'm gonna powder, just using the It Cosmetics by Pores Pressed Powder with a fluffy brush. This is the Sonia Kashuk powder brushes. So I did not like the Sonia Kashuk brushes for a very long time. I had really not great experiences with them. However, the new brushes that they came out when they redid them maybe like 6 or 8 months ago, it might not have even been that long ago, I actually really love. These brushes are fantastic, and you can get them at Target. They're really inexpensive. So anyway, my brothers, I started to get to know when so the brothers who have the same father, the oldest one is 7 years older than me, and then I have twin brothers who are 5 years older than me. And when I was 12 and the oldest one was 18, he got a hold of us, and I remember the day that he called and he said, "This is Terry." And I said, "Terry, my brother," or Terry, my dad, because my biological father's name is also Terry. And it was a very weird moment. So I got to know them sort of a little bit then, much more as I got older. We lived in Utah at the time, and we moved. There's a whole lot that happened in there because that was years and years ago, but ultimately I ended up having a relationship with them. This is the Urban Decay eyeshadow primer in Eden. So if you didn't know, because I did not know for the longest time, the eyeshadow primers by Urban Decay, the potion primers, come in various colors. So I don't love the anti-aging one, which was the first one that I got. It just, I don't know, there's something about it. I don't know if it's the oils in it that make it anti-aging, but I feel like it doesn't have the same amount of lasting power that the other ones have. So anyway, my brothers and I got to know each other. My oldest brother, from the 3, so I'm just gonna refer to him as my oldest brother because the other one was put up for adoption, so I didn't know him growing up at all. So anyway, my oldest brother went into the Air Force, So battery died. So that's a thing that happened. While I was grabbing the fresh battery, I actually went ahead and looked to see what the footage was looking like. My lighting is terrible. Sorry. Something I'll work on in the future, but for right now, I'm not exactly able to run out and get some lighting. So, anyway, I went ahead and did my under eyes while I was waiting also. And I don't use regular concealer for my under eyes. I don't tend to love how it looks. So I use the Urban Decay Naked Skin in the lavender. I have pretty dark hollows underneath here, and it seems to help. So, and doing a purple video, so goes with the theme. So anyway, what I was saying is that my oldest brother went into the Air Force, so that sort of, made it more difficult. Also, our age differences when I met my brothers, because I was 12 and they were 17 and 19, not exactly the greatest age differences to be working with. So for my eyes, I went ahead and primed them. I think that's what I was doing when the battery died, with the Urban Decay Primer Potion. And then I am going to use the Inglot 334, it's just like a light lavender color, to kind of set that with. So my oldest brother went into the Air Force, and then my mom met the person who ended up being my stepdad, and we left Utah, and there's a lot. I went to high school in Northern California, and then we ended up in Washington, and I consider Seattle home. Even though really I spent most of my time in Olympia, Seattle is really where I go when I go back and visit, and it's where most of my friends and the family that I go to see out there is closer to that area. And then for the crease, I'm going to use Inglot 446. It's just like a nice purple shade, kind of an eggplanty color. So So I didn't really know my brothers. I got to know them as I got older. There were different occasions when we had more time, and then my mom, who lived in Tacoma, Washington, I lived in Ohio at the time, but in 2004 my mom died, and it was really devastating for me. It was the worst thing that I will ever experience, the worst thing I have ever experienced, and it changed my outlook on life in kind of an unexpected positive way, because I know that I have already experienced the worst thing I'm ever going to experience in my life, and I don't have to worry about it. So that it's good and bad. It means that I have to deal with the fact that I don't have a mom, and that's awful, and I miss her every day, and I have a lot of guilt around her death, but it also helped me just be generally a more positive person. So it is what it is. I'm going to use the Inglot 615 just for like probably the outer half of the lid. So, and which brush do I use? That has stuff on it. I'm going to use a Sonia Kashuk just large eyeshadow brush. So after my mom died, I moved back to Washington for about 4 months and lived with my oldest brother, Terry, just so that I could get to know him again and spend time with him. We have a lot in common, and he was kind of the person I wanted to be when I grew up. So it meant a lot to me that he was willing to let me come and live with him, and that I had that opportunity. And leaving was my own choice. I came back to Ohio, where I am now, just because I felt like I had more of a support system here. It was really hard for me because I didn't feel like my brothers were experiencing the same kind of loss that I was, because they didn't grow up with my mom. And while they were definitely experiencing loss, I didn't feel like I had the kind of support that I needed. And my best friend was here in Ohio. She came out to visit when I'd been out there for about 4 months, and just was kind of, I don't know if I said what this first brush is. The Sigma F63 airbrush. That's what I used for the purple, for the light purple. I'm just going back into that violet shade to kind of make this softer at the edges. So anyway, about a year ago, I've been back in Ohio for a long time. I called my dad once after my mom died. It was not a good conversation. It did not go well at all. And I've talked to him literally 5 times my entire life. So about a year ago, my brother called and told me, he didn't even call, he sent me a text and told me that Dad was dying. And I remember telling my boss at the time, if my dad died, I was like, I just found out my dad's dying, and if he dies, I'm gonna take my 5 days of bereavement. And it was just sort of cold and callous because he was never around. Like, it didn't feel like I was losing anything. So I was going to do a cut crease, but I changed my mind. Cut creases don't really look much different than if I just put stuff on anyway, since I have a pretty hooded eye. So I'm going to use Beam from the Lime Crime Venus 3 palette. So this shade here. I'm just going to put it in that inner corner there that I left open. So my immediate reaction was just, what difference does it make? He's never been there. And for me, I kind of had already considered him dead. Like, if people asked about my parents, I just always told them that my parents were dead, because it was easier than trying to explain my life history, and it's complicated. Like, there's a lot of things that are really complicated about it, especially since it is kind of convoluted with, I know my brothers, but they grew up with my dad, and we have the same mom and dad, which is always people's, like, next question is, do we have different, like, biological fathers? No, my grandparents took them. They didn't believe that my father was my biological father, so they didn't take me. So my brother sent out a text to myself and the twins maybe 2 or 3 days after I found out, and he just told us that Dad was really depressed and that he would like to hear from us and that one of us should call him. And I decided that I was going to call. Like, that was the moment that I was like, I need to have my father in my life. I'm going to call him. This is going to be the moment. So I think I'm going to use Paradise from the Lime Crime palette for under my eyes. So anyway, I talked to my dad, and he has stage 4 liver and colon cancer, and I was told that he had decided that he was not going to do any kind of chemotherapy, and that the doctors were giving him around 2 months to live. So I called him and had sort of immediately just like bonded. Like for the first time ever, I felt like we built this relationship, and it was so immediate, and it was so strange because we had just never had that. It was not something that had existed for me, and I had gotten to a point in my life where I just didn't think that I would ever meet him, and it, like part of me was okay with that, and part of me was just sad. But then after finding out that he was actually dying, and it no longer being an option and no longer being up to me whether or not I was going to get to meet him, definitely made a huge difference. And it hit me really hard. So that was July-ish, and in August my brother Terry was going out to see him, and he told me that if I'm going to use Urban Decay 24/7 and Rockstar for my eyeliner, but he told me that if I wanted to go meet my dad, that he would pay for my plane ticket. So I very much wanted to. Like, it was immediate. I was like, absolutely, if that's an option, then that's what I'm doing. So the next day I talked to him and I was like, yes, when is it happening? I can get whatever time I need off of work, and like, I have the opportunity to meet him, I'm going to meet him. And at that point, my dad had decided that since I wanted to meet him, that he was going to start doing chemo. And the chemo very quickly had sort of turned things around. He had previously, like while they were trying to figure out what was wrong with him before they realized he had cancer, from Thanksgiving the previous year to June when he was finally diagnosed, had lost over 100 pounds and went from being kind of a not heavier guy, but definitely kind of huskier, for lack of a better term, to basically, my brother said he looked like a Holocaust victim. So because of that, he didn't want me to see him that way. So when I talked to him, he was absolutely no. I was not coming to meet him. That wasn't going to happen. He just flat out said no. And I sat on the phone and cried with him and argued. And I was like, well, I'm just going to show up. Like, you can't really tell me I can't be there. Except he could, because he told me that if I showed up that he just wouldn't answer the door. So there was that. I'm going to go ahead and do mascara. And I'm not going to do a wing just because I'm not going to put on lashes, and it seems unnecessary at the moment. So, and this is, because I have big cheeks, if you've had issues with eyelash curlers poking you in the cheek, this is from Sephora, but I know that a lot of different places make them now where the back piece moves but it doesn't stick out here. This is the first eyelash curler I was ever able to use comfortably. So yeah, so this one's the Sephora brand. I think it was $12, but I have another one that's literally like identical to it that I found online for like $3. So, anyway, he told me that I could come and meet him in the spring, that he was gonna make it through winter and live until spring, and that's when I could come and see him. And then I found out that where he lives in Idaho is spring doesn't happen until June. So there's also that. But I was pretty devastated. I did go and meet him in June of this year. I flew out to Seattle And then my brothers and I took a road trip basically out to see him, and we stayed with him for a week, and it was a lot of fun. He was doing so much better than I could have expected. The mascara I'm using is the Wet n Wild Renegade in, I think this is, oh, it's Avenging. I thought it was called just Amethyst. It's Avenging Amethyst. But since we're going for purple, I'm going for purple. And I like this anyway. Fan of the purple mascara. So we went out and met him, and while he was doing much better than anyone expected him to do, and they've basically said that, like, he's a miracle case, he has to be on chemo for the rest of his life. If he stops doing chemo, then he'll die. And it also means that he's terminal. He has an expiration date. They just don't know when it is anymore. So at this point, it's just, like, we just make plans to go see him again next summer and hope that he makes it. Ideally, he'll, somehow manage to pull through and live for another 5 years, or be a true miracle case and live for another 10 years, and I'll get to have a dad for a while. And we still, there are things that we definitely do not see eye to eye on, and I'm at a place in my life where there's no, like, he's dying. I'm not going to change him. And even if he wasn't dying, like, if I need to change who he is for us to have a relationship, then we're probably not going to be able to have a relationship anyway. Like, it's not going to work. So things that I know he wouldn't necessarily agree with, I just keep to myself. And things that he does that I don't agree with, unless it's something that I really, like, him and my mom didn't have the end on the best of terms. So certainly talking about my mom is off limits. Period. Like, I'm not okay with him talking about my mom ever. That's not true. Sometimes he has nice things to say, but mostly not. So I'm going to do my eyebrows. Everybody does their eyebrows off camera. I'm not going to do anything fancy with them, so I'm just going to do them quick. And this is Chocolate Gel Eyeliner by Bang Beauty. I don't like it as eyeliner. I got it in my BoxyCharm, and I was really excited to have a brown eyeliner, and then the shade of it is not, it doesn't show up, and I hated it as an eyeliner, and so I decided to use it as a brow gel, and it works pretty well. So I'm gonna use that for just sort of the inner part, and then I'm going to use the Benefit Give Me Brow in 4.5. The points that they did, like the 3.5, 4.5, they are the best thing ever. So if you ever had an issue finding your shade in Give Me Brow, you should try again. I have a lot of brow hair. I actually cut it off, and then I usually kind of shape them, but I didn't this time. So anyway, okay, looks like my battery's overheating. So I'm going to stop this for a second. I am going to do my brows off camera. I'll be right back. So they're definitely sisters and not twins. So anyway, so I met my dad and things went pretty well. And then after that week, I went back to Seattle and was spending time with my brothers. And while I was in Seattle, my grandfather, my dad's dad, had a massive stroke. I'm gonna go ahead and do my blush. This is Japanesque Velvet Touch Blush. 03. It's like, I swear it had a shade number. The shade is 03. And I've only used this once, so we'll see how crazy it is. I tend to way overdo blush or not do enough of it at all. So my grandmother, who is my dad's mom, had, you know, gotten a hold of my brothers and let them know about my grandfather, and then they told me that if my grandfather died, that my grandmother probably wouldn't live for very long, and they grew up with them basically as like their parents, so it hit them hard, and that was very difficult for me to see, but also it made me feel like I wasn't allowed to have my own feelings about really anything. Sorry, the brush that I used for that was the Luxie 660 Precision Foundation brush. I would never use it for foundation, but as a blush brush, it works fantastically. And then for highlighter, I'm actually going to use the Ciate. I waffled back and forth a little bit about what I was going to do, but I'm going to use the Ciate Moon Dust because it's new. Well, it's not new. It's new to me, and I love it. So that's what I'm going to use. Anyway, so I'm just going to use this crown brush. It doesn't have a number or anything on it. But, so my grandfather after he had the stroke, they found out that he had a brain aneurysm. And they had told my grandmother that if he was lucky, he would be alive for 2 more months. And 2 days after I got back to Ohio, he died. And I didn't feel like I was supposed to be sad about it, or like I was supposed to have feelings, because it's, you know, he's my grandfather, but I didn't grow up with them. And I've only met them the one time, and, you know, it was difficult because it put me in a really weird place as far as, like, feeling. I'm not gonna contour, just in case you were wondering. I'm not gonna do it. Feeling like I wasn't essentially allowed to have my feelings. And for my lips, I'm going to use the ABH Saint Tropez lip gloss. I think that I used my points at Sephora to get it. It's like a deluxe sample size. Like a little mini. But it smells really good. Really, it was difficult for me in a way that I don't really know how to explain, because it was like I didn't even have time to process meeting my family and them coming into my life, and then my grandfather died. And then on top of that, during that same time, my oldest brother, who had been put up for adoption, found me. And that's awesome, but also really difficult because both of his biological parents are dead. And it makes me feel like I need to fill the void that my mom's death leaves. I didn't really know his dad, so I met him a couple of times when I was little, but because I didn't really know him, there's not much I can do in that, as far as that. But it just means that I have a lot of pressure, and since then I've also been contacted. I did Ancestry.com after I met him. He sent me a kit and asked me to do it. And my mom's brother and my mom's sister, both of whom I've never met anyone from my mom's family, with the exception of like once when I was 4, and I was 4, I vaguely remember, and had to tell them both as well that their sister was dead, and that's been really hard on me, and that's been just in the last month. I actually just sent the email telling them what happened with her death last weekend, and I don't know what to do in terms of like reliving all of that. It's difficult, and it's brought up a lot of emotions and caused me to have to deal with a lot of things that I really thought that I had dealt with that I haven't. And also last month my grandmother died. So, and my brother has told me that if my grandfather died, that my grandmother would probably die, but she was doing well, and then she got a UTI, she went into the hospital, and she died, and it was completely unexpected. And so I lost both of my grandparents right after, for the first time, feeling like I had an opportunity to have them in my life. And so it's been a really difficult time. And so I'm taking a little bit of time off of work and kind of trying to focus on my mental health, because I went to see my doctor, and I had a total meltdown in her office. And it's still with my grandmother also, because I don't know them the same way that my brothers did. I don't feel like I'm supposed to be sad about it. But it's not just mourning their deaths, it's also mourning the opportunity and kind of processing the fact that I've had this whole life without them. And now any part of me that had spent my entire life hoping that I was going to get to know them is gone. So it's something that I believe everybody has a right to their feelings, including myself. And I do makeup to deal with it. When I feel like I'm going to cry, I put on eyeshadow, and then I don't cry. So anyway, it was a lot. It's a long video. I'm surprised if anybody stuck around to watch it. I will probably do more of these. I'm going to be doing my makeup every day and posting onto Instagram. My Instagram right now is Goat Meat Girl. I don't know whether I'll change that or not. I might make a second one just for makeup, even though that one is mostly just makeup right now anyway. I don't want to change my name on there because my name, Siobhan, is the word for goat meat. So anyway, if you are interested, feel free to leave a comment down below. I'm not going to ask for likes or subscribers. It's up to you whether you want to do those things. Everyone knows how YouTube works. And I hope that you have a good day, and I hope that if you're going through any of these things yourself, that maybe hearing that someone else is having a difficult time but making it through it, that helps. And I hope that you have a wonderful day. Have a good day.